big and warm welcome to everyone. Thank you for tuning in. This is Red Ice Creations Radio. My name is Henrik Palmgren and we are recording from Sweden's west coast. We have a new show available every Sunday and Thursday at redicecreations.com. So check out our growing archive and our news. Lots of interesting and important stuff passing through the website. So I hope you tell your friends all about it, help us spread the word and help us grow. Today we have a very interesting and also very important program lined up for you. We have Paul Levy with us and we'll get to our guest in just a moment. Before that, let's just say thanks to Michael Serion for being with us last week. Michael is a regular, he's on the third Thursday of each month. And last week we talked about enlightenment, the ego, the self and the soul. Very important material. Also check out our latest subscriber interview that we did with Sorion on Theosophy, Blavatsky and hijacked organizations. Very interesting stuff. So now let's continue in the tradition of speaking about the self and the reflection of our collective psychosis with our guest. Today with us on the line we have Paul Levy. He is the author of a book entitled The Madness of George W. Bush, a reflection of our collective psychosis. And we recently did a show with Michael Tsarion here on Red Ice Creations Radio, where we mentioned Paul's work and referenced his website and a few articles he has on there. And Michael also helped us to get in contact with Paul to do this interview. So a big thanks to Michael for helping us setting this up. And now, as I say, our guest is Paul Levy, and this is going to be a very interesting program. I hope to talk a little bit about his latest book, his writing and his work in general. Paul's website, by the way, is awakeninthedream.com. That's one word, awakeninthedream.com. Well, you'll find lots of interesting writing. And beyond that, I don't know that much about Paul, so maybe we can let him mention a little bit about himself. But let's get things going here. So welcome to the program, Paul, and thanks for spending some time with us today.
Yeah, I'm just excited to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. It's great to have you. You know, as I said, for those who might not be familiar with you, Paul, if you will, tell us a little bit about yourself. And as I understand, you have quite an interesting story on how you came onto this path, so to speak.
Yeah, no, that's an understatement. Sure. I had in 1981, I had this spiritual awakening that almost killed me. It was so intense, and it almost drove me crazy. And it was, the whole source of it was just this real deep trauma and abuse that was getting acted out in my family. And you know, and quite often that's the way it works. People, you know, get really kind of get wounded, get traumatized, or a victim of abuse, and that actually potentially initiates a process of spiritual awakening. And that's what happened to me. And for the first year, a number of times, I don't know, maybe 6 or 10 times, I'm not real sure, I got thrown in mental hospitals and told, oh, you've gone, you know, totally insane, you're mentally ill, and you'll have to, you know, we hope one day to make you a functioning member of society type of thing. Mm-hmm. And it was really clear to me that I was having a spiritual awakening. I mean, I can talk about maybe some of the experiences, but it was just very obvious. And it was very difficult in the sense that, you know, the process, the experience broke apart my family, like my parents. I'm the only child. They just totally bought into the, you know, the sort of diagnosis of the doctors who, in their eyes, were authority figures. Yeah. And, you know, but I as quickly as I could, extricated myself from the psychiatric scene and continued my unfoldment. And have, you know, it's been however many years, 25 years, and I'm still integrating what was shown to me. And the real most essential way to describe what was happening to me was I was having this experience of seeing that this universe was a dream. And stuff began happening in my life that was physically impossible, that wasn't supposed to be able to happen, you know, in this world. It could only happen in dreams. And depending on who I spoke with, like when I would just phenomenologically express what was happening, what my experience was to a psychiatrist, they would just pathologize it, where I would describe the exact same experience. You know, I was beginning to meet my spiritual teachers, these great Tibetan lamas or these exact same experience. And instead of being pathologized and told I was, mentally ill, it was being reflected back that, oh, this is great news. You're beginning to awaken to your true nature. It's very interesting. That was how my process of actually what I've written about in the book got started really in 1981.
Fascinating. So, up to before that happened, what was your life? In I guess in quotes here, but normal in that sense, or were you into?
It was a completely normal life. I was, I just graduated from college a few years before, and had gotten a degree in economics, and then also I wanted to be, I decided I wanted to be an artist, so I got a degree in studio art, and was teaching art and all that. But the deep trauma that I had experienced kind of got activated, and it forced me to deal with the suffering that was that had gotten sort of awakened in me, and that was really what catapulted me into the process of spiritual awakening.
Interesting. Is there something if you want to, of course, kind of mention, take an example to what the kind of stuff you were experiencing?
Well, I'll tell you one experience, and it's kind of edgy.
Yeah, sure.
It's really making myself very vulnerable. But it was the first. It was actually on the first day. There were other experiences. Well, what had happened? I had been going so inwards and just watching my mind, because I quickly figured out that I couldn't figure my way out of my suffering with my intellect. And then I just figured out, oh, well, the one thing that helps is just to watch what's happening and to turn inwards. And of course, that's what meditation is. And then after I was doing that probably about over maybe 1.5 years, something like that. And we're talking hours and hours a day. And I had a teacher. And then one day, it was like I got hit by a bolt of lightning, but it wasn't an actual physical bolt of lightning in the sky. It was like for this nanosecond, a bolt of lightning just ignited inside of my brain. And I didn't have any idea what that was about, but I've since found out, that quite often spiritual awakenings are initiated, just by, even when you think about in mythology with Zeus with the thunderbolt, or the Tibetan guru, the holder of the Vajra. And so it was something of that sort. And then within a day of that, I went into a completely altered state where I was just having the recognition that this was a mass shared dream that we were all sharing. And I was out in the Bay Area in the United States, and a friend of mine was visiting me, and I was acting so unlike my ordinary, sort of conditioned self, that he thought I was having this nervous breakdown. And quite often, when people are having some form of awakening or shamanic initiation, at first it appears totally to mimic a nervous breakdown, because their psyche is actually disintegrating towards potentially a higher integration. So he actually brought me to a mental hospital, and I remember being brought by ambulance to a hospital, and this was Highland Hospital in Oakland, California. This was May 1981. And what I'm about to tell you actually happened, but like I said, it's not often I speak about this. I get brought into the hospital and brought into this room where all the patients are hanging out. It's like the lounge for the psychiatric patients, and I'm completely just feeling like I'm filled with spirit at this point, And I see this woman, and she's blind, and I just, without even thinking about it, just go up to her. And, her eyes are totally, very opaque, like a blind person's eyes. There's no radiance.
Yeah.
It's very clear. She can't see. And it was like I was given certain, like, these lines to say, and I just began reciting these words. And what I began finding myself saying, like I was channeling something, was, all you have to do to see is open your eyes and look. And I kept on repeating that and getting closer to her and looking at her eyes. And over the course of about a minute of just repeating those words, she regained her sight. And then, as if, it was choreographed, they actually took me right at that moment, and they strapped me up on a table where I spent the night. And to sort of complete the story, the next day after they unstrapped me, I was in a room, and coincidentally, who's the other person in the room but this ex-blind woman? And she's just sitting across the table from me, and she's just smiling at me, from ear to ear. And, we haven't said a word. And all of a sudden, my heart chakra just blossomed and I had never had that experience so fully. But, you know, when you have that experience, you're aware, oh, wow, this is like, feels like a 1,000-petaled lotus just blossoming. And then I understood, oh, I get it. Her eyes were physically fine, but psychologically she wasn't letting herself look. And somehow I saw that the night before. And then when I understood that, then all of a sudden she said the only thing that I remember she ever said to me, which was, aren't you going to answer the phone call from Roy, which is my father's name, and he's the person who really wounded me. You know, he was actually a very sick person, and so within, I don't know, 10, 20 seconds, into the room walks the nurse saying my father's on the phone. And so to complete that story, I was in that hospital for 3 days. That was one of the first of, like I said, maybe about 10 hospitalizations that year, because I was, you know, just in the world, and my awakening wasn't being contained in some sort of ashram. But the doctor reflected back to me that I had to convince him that I wasn't crazy, or he was going to keep me in that hospital for a really long time. And, you know, and I thought about that, and I, you know, sort of thought, well, I don't really want to be here, you know, for a long time. So I just began talking about my wound and my trauma and how my father had wounded me and my neuroses, and he let me out. He said to me, well, the fact that you're able to do that and just become completely normal shows me that you're not really crazy. And and then as soon as I got out, I knew something had happened. When you have an experience like that, you know. And so I just intuitively, I just knew I had to find somebody to talk to, because all my friends thought I had a nervous breakdown. And I found one of the greatest, this Buddhist monk from Burma who was living in San Francisco, and he told me, well, you're in luck. The greatest Buddhist master of Burma, this like 85-year-old master, had just arrived, and I should go and get his blessings. And I did, and he was the first of my teachers. His name was Tungpulu Sayadaw, and who I met. And so that was really, you know, just to give you a little sense, that was the first experience of just many, many experiences. And that was not even like one of the major ones. That was sort of just the start. And trying to imagine me telling my parents about what had happened, you know, with psychiatrists, of course, that's just going to confirm to them, you know, how crazy, you know, I was. You know, and then if I can just say just a quick commentary. I didn't know it then, but in that experience with that blind woman was the whole seed of my work, because I saw, oh wow, I was getting dreamed up to play the role of, like, she was ready to heal her blindness, and I was the figure sent by Central Casting to pick up that role, and to actually just, you know, I said my lines perfectly, and to help her to, like, actually step out of her, like, you know, contracting against, you know, just looking, but at the same time, if this is a dream, who is she but the blind part of me that was actually holding on and not opening my eyes and looking? And so that, when I say it was the source of the seed of my work, because my whole work is pointing at that we're having this mass shared dream that we're collaboratively dreaming up together, and when you actually see that, then our experience becomes liberated.
Interesting, very interesting indeed. I mean, did your kind of more, as you say, you met with this priest, this Buddhist priest, but had you at this point done any kind of, you know, searching within the spiritual, you know, topics or areas that are out there, or were you brand new to this at that point?
Yeah, well, I was in my mid-20s at that point, and, you know, but I mean, for the last maybe couple of years, because of the deep suffering I was going through, you know, I was meditating and first beginning to study spiritual teachings, you know, like Krishnamurti and Buddhism and Trungpa and Castaneda and stuff like that. But I was still, I mean, it was only a couple of years, and I was studying it a lot, but I was still